Hello, my name is Jessie Kornberg, and I am the CEO and president of the Skirball Cultural Center. Thanks for tuning in to a Curator Talk. This was originally presented to our members and donors. Members and donors sustain the Skirball's commitment to upholding timeless Jewish values. They allow us to present these exhibitions and programs in order to foster a greater sense of discovery and hope. They help us expand our connections to one another, and ultimately we hope that they inspire in each of us a deeper commitment to help build a more just society. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the program.
First, want to just say welcome. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces and some new faces too. We're just thrilled to have you here. I love this opportunity to give our members, our dear devoted community, a first peek at our exhibitions. And I think I've never been more excited about it than I am this season, because we really have an embarrassment of riches to share with you. Our three, here are the kind of the two things I'm extra excited about these shows. First of all, they are so thrillingly different from one another. On one hand, we have the Diane von Furstenberg exhibition, this exuberant, expansive fashion exhibition on an American icon with a deep Jewish story. In another gallery, we have an exhibition of photographic portraiture and poems, all about endangered languages in this country and the incredible individuals and communities who are working to keep those languages alive. And then in a third gallery, we've got a contemporary art exhibition that's really a cohesive installation about the interconnectedness between human beings and trees that uses everything from ancient pyrography to contemporary artificial intelligence technology to explore this theme. So very different from one another. On the other hand, what I love is that the exhibitions really relate to one another, almost like trees next to each other and their roots. They're these kind of deep interconnections under the soil. And they do so in a way that speaks directly to our values as a Jewish American cultural center. And also, kind of interestingly, to the values of Sukkot, which is the Jewish harvest festival, which actually tonight is the beginning, Erev Sukkot. So it's part of why I'm bringing it up today. Now, we have a rabbi, probably at least one rabbi in the room, so you'll wait till afterwards to hold your corrections, but I hope I'm getting that right. Tonight is Erev Sukkot. So let me tell you the values that I'm talking about, that these exhibitions all speak to. First, the value of welcoming the stranger, which is central to Sukkot and is really the underpinning of everything we do at the Skirball. I don't know if any of you know this, some of our docents who are in the room might know, but our architect Moshe Safdie designed the lobby of the Skirball to look like a sukkah, which is a temporary dwelling that Jewish people eat and sleep in during this harvest festival. So it has 3 walls, but the whole front is open to the public, so that's why he made the whole front glass. So that idea of welcoming people in, we always wanted the Skirball to be a sukkah. Well, each of these exhibitions really embodies that idea of welcome. Diane von Furstenberg and the life that she lived as a global citizen, an immigrant herself, a person who celebrates uniqueness everywhere she sees it. Our tree exhibition, which really is a study in diversity, first of all in the natural world and also in the human world, and of course on the national language as well, from the standpoint of language, really drives home that message of welcoming the stranger. The second Skirball/Sukkot value that I want to mention is appreciating the natural world in which we live. Now, it's easy to figure out that an exhibition about trees has quite a lot to do with human dependence on and connectedness with the natural world. But it's also really true of the language exhibition. How many of you who are in here today have seen the shows already and so just a few, so the rest of you will know what I'm talking about first of all, when you hear more about the shows. But there's so much rootedness of languages, particularly indigenous languages, and the land on which they're spoken. And then thinking about the third exhibition, Diane von Furstenberg, I was really surprised to learn that Diane's her patterns are inspired very much by nature. And you'll see that in the exhibition, we have photographs that she took of plants and animals and that inspired the prints that you all wear. So again, there's that closeness with nature. And then finally, there's the theme of honoring our ancestors, which if I had to pick one kind of Skirball theme, the idea that we honor memory, we honor the people who come before us, not only to preserve that memory, but to kind of learn from it, interpret it, and pay it forward to future generations. That is just at the heart of all three of these exhibitions in ways that I won't go into because I want to save more time for our wonderful guests. So bringing together these shows right now, I do want to say shows that fundamentally talk about our connections to one another as human beings on this planet. It feels especially kind of poignant and timely for us to be bringing that to all of you, to LA audiences at a time of so much divisiveness and polarization in our country. And we hope that you find these exhibitions not only engaging, but life-affirming and moving, and because that's what we seek to do at the Skirball. So now, what we are our plan today is to have 3 20-minute conversation sessions up here. I'm going to be keeping time very carefully, and you'll hear a dialogue between our artists and curators about each of the exhibitions with a few words at the beginning on kind of what the exhibition is about, since we figured many of you hadn't seen the shows yet. So we're going to start with a discussion of ancient wisdom for a future ecology, trees, time, and technology. And I want to call to the stage the curators of this exhibition, Vicki Phung Smith and Selma Holo, come on up, as well as the artists Ken Goldberg and Tiffany Shlain, who are featured. All right.
Hello, and welcome to the Skirball. My name is Vicki Phung Smith, and I am so pleased to present Ancient Wisdom for a Future Ecology, Trees, Time, and Technology by artists Tiffany Shlain and Ken Goldberg. This exhibition is co-curated by Selma Holo and myself, and is part of the Getty's current PST art initiative that is focused on the intersection of art and science. If trees are essential to human existence and have served as a source of inspiration and learning in Jewish traditions and other cultures, how can we expand our understanding of how can we expand our understanding of history, the present moment, and our collective future in a way that centers our relationship to trees? In this exhibition, Tiffany and Ken draw inspiration from dendrochronology, the science of tree ring dating, artificial intelligence, and Jewish texts and traditions to re-examine human narratives and their relationship to nature. This exhibition features 6 tree ring sculptures that reimagine our past and collective futures in new ways. A video portrait of Los Angeles that draws from open source ecology data sets, and an invitation for visitors to create personal tree tributes using AI software. The artworks explore our complex history with trees while fostering community reflection on the role we all share in shaping a more inclusive and sustainable future. Now, we're delighted to hear from my co-curator, Selma Holo, and the artists Tiffany Shlain and Ken Goldberg.
Thank you, Vicki. So nice to see all of you here. Vicki, I just want to say there would never have been a show without you're able to follow through on every single little thing, and thank you.
Hold it right like
Can you hear better? Is that better? Yeah. Okay. So we're limited to 20 minutes, so we're going to try to make every minute count. I would like to start with Ken and with Tiffany recalling our origin story, how this show actually got to be. And the first conversation that we had when Sheri had invited me to help figure out what the Skirball's PST exhibition would be. I made a telephone call to an old colleague of mine, Ken Goldberg, with whom I had worked 30 plus years ago at USC, where he did a brilliant exhibition on power and water with Margaret Lazari. And I never forgot it. It was unforgettable. And then later I got to meet Tiffany at their wedding and soon discovered that she was an artist in her own right. So I would like the two of them to spend a couple of minutes, we're gonna have to be very tight on time, talking about our origin story and how it became.
Okay, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Vicki and Selma and Sheri and the museum. Okay, so I'm just gonna do it very quickly, is that Ken and I met because my father wrote a book called Art and Physics, and Ken is an artist and a scientist, and my work is also exploring art and science. And so my father pretty much introduced us, and what we fell in love at first sight over this book, Art and Physics. So this subject was perfect, and then we got an email out of the blue from Selma saying, you know, the Getty's theme is art and science collide, and you two would be perfect to submit a proposal. So I'll say that part. Ken, do you want to?
All right. Well, that was, I have to say, it was always great to hear from Selma. She has always been an inspiration, and when we had the conversation, the idea of the Getty, their theme for this event was going to be art and science. So we were extremely excited because it was exactly the things we've been working on. My day job is I teach engineering at Berkeley, and so I was really happy to work. And Tiffany had been starting to work on this new direction. Her work's around using trees
And
over
really,
the pandemic.
Yeah, reimagining dendrochronology, which is the science of tree ring dating. And you know how you always see a tree at a national forest, and those tree slices are so fascinating, but all the language left me cold. It was always like, the Battle of Hastings, and Christopher Columbus discovers America. And I'm like, I want to make a feminist history tree ring. I want to imagine what other histories trees have seen. So I was on this whole journey reimagining what trees had witnessed, and Ken was working with Google at the time on the tree data.
So yeah, because I was doing a study with Google and a professor at MIT on trying to classify trees using artificial intelligence. And so we were both thinking along similar lines, but we hadn't thought about collaborating on an art project until Selma came along.
And actually, I should say that Ken and I have been together for like 27 years?
28.
28 years. And we always forget. It's been a long time. That's how beautiful a long relationship is. And we've collaborated, I would say, almost every 3 or 4 years. Like, we've co-written movies together. We've done art installations. But this, by far, was our biggest. Like, Selma going, I want you two to do a museum proposal together on art and science. And we were so excited because it has just been such a gift. This whole process with Vicki and Selma and working together on something like this has been amazing.
And I also just want to add that the Skirball is such an inspiring place.
Yes.
We were so delighted. We had heard of it. We had visited in the past, but just to come up here and see everything, the incredible resources, the facilities, and the staff, who are absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's been a dream. I just think of the early meetings with Sheri and then even the designer Paul, and it's just been, every step of the way has just been pretty fantastic.
Well, this has been a dream team. There's no question about it. Dream team. But I want to go back in history a little bit for my two contemporary artists here and quote Ralph Waldo Emerson. Why? Because Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Do not follow where the path may lead, but go instead where there is no path and make a trail." And I believe that the work in Ancient Wisdom, which you will all go to see when you have a minute because it is unbelievable, is wildly original. Ken and Tiffany created their own path and are walking down it, leaving original thoughts and ideas everywhere that they leave. What I'd like you to talk about for the next few minutes is where your ideas come from. Because you bring, even though you're a team, you bring different ideas to this. 1 and 1 does not just make 2 exhibition, but 1 and 1 makes like 10. It's just so fantastically collaborative and original. So could you talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you see the tree rings, you know, I've been a film director for 25 years, and whenever I make a film about any subject, I always like to go back thousands of years in time on the subject to ground it in context. And then I usually work up to where we are today. And then my films always end with kind of asking, hoping you'll ask the question of where are we going to go next. And these tree rings, to me, are almost like physical embodiments of a film, of a story. Because, we live in California that has the oldest, the largest, and biggest trees in the world in our state. The bristlecone pine is over 5,000 years old. It almost matches the age of the Jewish people. We did not work with the bristlecone pine because they are these sacred trees no one will touch. We only work with salvage wood. But for me, these trees, and we live near Muir Woods, near the redwoods, and they live in a deep past that we'll never know, and they will live in a deep future we will never know. So I love this idea of thinking of time in terms of tree rings, and what have they seen? What have they witnessed? So Ken and I conceived of the tree rings you're going to see. I don't know if I should mention them yet, but anyways, these different subjects, everything from the history of histories to dendrogenealogy, a timeline of the Jewish people, to a tree of knowledge, and more.
So, well, she's alluding to the other thing, which was when we knew that the Skirball has a very strong Jewish theme, and we are both Jews. So we've been thinking a lot about that in our lives, and we started thinking about the tree of knowledge as obviously a starting point from Adam and Eve, and we started thinking you have to do something where that has to be the center point of the exhibit. So that was the very first idea, and you'll see that we found a tree that we kind of both fell in love with, that was this gigantic piece of wood, and that became the tree of knowledge.
Oh, that's right there.
All right.
That's the tree of knowledge. Sorry, I'm like, we have a visual. That is 7,000 pounds. It took 12 human beings to move that piece into the museum. It is, and that's only one side of it. It's such a powerful piece, and it embodies, if you walk around the back, when you first walk into the exhibit, it's got like this gnarled, incredible back to it. And that's what ideas are before they become knowledge. They're messy. They wrestle with each other until they become the elegance of an idea, of a question, of knowledge. So I feel like this three-dimensional sculpture really embodies ideas turning into knowledge.
And I do want to say something which I think should be important for all of you. We are dealing with ideas, the most profound ideas possible, but we're also dealing with beauty on a level which we almost don't talk about anymore in contemporary art. But the beauty of these natural objects that are then made even more meaningful and more beautiful by the intervention of the artist is something which I think will move all of you when you see it. But speaking of interventions, then Ken, I'd like to maybe direct this one to you, is the loop. There is a video when you walk in, and the video is a kind of an overview of several streets in LA and the overstory, the tops of the trees, and what they might mean. This is something that Ken took on, paying homage to Ed Ruscha, who did the buildings on the streets, some of these same streets. Could you talk about what that means to you and what it might mean to all of us as we explore that video?
Okay, thank you. I think that I had been working with Google, and if you're familiar with their Street View and the Google Maps, they're this way of looking down at the earth. And so they had been trying to classify the trees, to take the census, to track how tree canopies change over time, especially with regard to climate change. And also, especially in urban settings, because there's a great disparity between areas and neighborhoods in San Francisco, in LA. So we wanted to represent that in some way, and as we were looking at different maps and different ways of representing it, we started thinking about the variations in neighborhoods in LA. And that's when Ed Ruscha came to mind because of his famous Hollywood Boulevard and Sunset Boulevard videos. We started thinking about the same idea, but viewing it from the top instead of the side. And similarly, there's no humans in the picture. Ed Ruscha was very interested in the architectural contrasts, and we're interested in the natural contrast between these different areas. So when you watch it, you'll see Hollywood Boulevard and Sunset Boulevard are fairly lush with iconic trees like the palms, but also then you get into Whittier Boulevard from East LA and Adams Boulevard, where there is almost no trees. And so without coming out and hitting people over the head, we wanted to share this very huge disparity between these neighborhoods and how much they're impacted essentially by the lack of canopy cover, which is so valuable in so many ways.
Yeah, I think we're accustomed to think of inequities in wealth, meaning money, but we don't realize how much the trees add to our lives and what they represent in terms of social and cultural equities and inequities. Tiffany, I'd like to turn to you now and talk a little bit about the writing on these incredible tree swaths. And one of the things I want to make sure that everybody knows is that essentially Tiffany wrote with fire. And when you're writing on these trees, it reminded me of the Torah scribes and how they would write not necessarily with fire, but with extreme care. Because if they made a mistake, that was really a disaster. Tiffany, can you talk about your choice of the writing and why you did it that way?
Yeah, I'm going to go back. So when I mentioned the tree of knowledge, I had let me go back. Okay, actually. Oopsie. Okay, well, first of all, there's me doing pyrography. So I actually have a pen that has fire on the tip and it's plugged in. So first of all, Ken and I spend a year or two distilling what is on the tree ring. So it is the ultimate creative act to not only write it and research it, but then distill. There's a lot of humor in there too if you read it, because we're playing with the convention of tree ring timelines, but they're not as literal as those. So this one is called If We Lose Ourselves, and this is a history of histories, because we chronicle the different ways we've stored ideas and transmitted ideas from oral history to written, to Wikipedia, to ChatGPT. So first what we do is we design it, and then a very painstaking process of tracing it with graphite paper. And then I spend hours and hours and hours in a very meditative flow state burning the text into the wood, and Ken burned all the dots on there. The actual, were you going to say something?
Well, I was going to say, I was actually trying to explain it to one of the the guards last night, a young man, and I said, well, we use carbon paper, and he looked at me like, what is that?
Well, it's actually, I love it because I've worked in technology. I founded the Webby Words. I spent a lot of time in high tech. And now, as I'm getting older, I'm returning to like the original graphite paper, and I'm sanding wood, and I'm using it's fantastic. I can't recommend enough working with your hands, and like, it's like I'm returning to myself. I feel like I'm putting myself into the wood, and I'm bearing witness to what I'm writing. Like, you could easily have we could have easily etched this with a laser. There are laser machines that etch wood. But the days and days and sometimes months, like dendrogeology took me months, and I did feel like I was doing a Torah scribe, and I felt like I was bearing witness to this history. So it's like I was putting myself into the wood in a very intimate way. So that is called pyrography, and there was one other, I was going to show you the tracing. So that's the tree of knowledge. And Ken and I spent the last year distilling what are the big questions of humanity? What is love? What is beauty? And then tracing it onto the tree ring and then burning it on.
I love the way Tiffany speaks of the physicality and the corporeality of this project, and how important it was that it that's really important. I want to close with one last thing, which is not about physicality, but is about abstraction. When you get in and you're looking at the tree rings, you're going to see one tree that has only equations on it, okay? This is called abstract expression. I want to read you something quickly and then ask you to, and then we will call this a day. There's a book called To the End of the Land by David Grossman. Some of you might have read it. It's an extremely important book. And there's a passage in that book, To the End of the Land, where the soldiers in the war, the Yom Kippur War, are in a bunker and are terrified. They are just absolutely paralyzed with fear. And then Grossman writes, a soldier who looked as if he was around 15, with soft, smooth cheeks, lay curled up and mumbling quickly, devotedly. Our hero touches his leg and asks him to say a prayer for him. Without opening his eyes, the boy said he wasn't praying. He wasn't religious at all. He was just reciting chemistry equations. That's how he used to quiet himself before his matriculation exams, and it always worked. Our hero then asked him to say a few equations for him. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, well, I have to say, that's a perfect example, Selma, that you found that quote about how wonderful you are and how great it's been working with you and Vicki. I can relate to that story because if you're in engineering, you have to spend a lot of time with these equations. You sort of live them and you learn what they symbolize. And so we wanted to tell a history that was about science, coming back to the Getty, but tell it without words, to just use the symbols of math. And so we started to, same idea, we had to collect what were going to be the equations that would tell that story. And we sent them around to different groups. We had a lot of disagreement, believe it or not, about what were the right equations to put in there. But we finally settled on these. E equals mc squared made it, of course, and F equals ma and a few of those. But it's interesting because they're kind of abstractions. They really are like poetry and something. They're symbols. So we wanted to leave them speak for themselves in the final form. And it's a redwood, so we particularly like that. And we just felt that it was a way of really bringing this collision between art and science together.
Beautifully said. Now, I'm being told I have to stop. We have scratched the tip of the iceberg. When you go to the show, you're going to encounter AI, ancient to the most contemporary technologies and wisdoms. And there are things where you're going to be able to be involved, interactive part of it, which is really important.
After all of the talks, we'll be in the gallery giving a tour.
And you'll be able to see everything. So I have to stop. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, Selma, Tiffany, and Ken. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to the stage my fellow co-curator on the national language, Sarah Daymude, and artist B.A. Van Sise.
Make a BA sandwich. Hello, everybody. It's so good to see you all, and welcome. We are delighted to welcome you to our fantastic new exhibition on the national language, The Poetry of America's Endangered Tongues. So this is a collection of photographs by artist B.A. Van Sise, who we are very honored to have with us today. We'll hear from him in just a few moments, but first I wanted to introduce you to the exhibition. So this exhibition highlights the stories of 46 speakers of endangered languages that are currently living in the United States today, emphasizing the role that language plays in preserving cultural heritage for future generations. In close collaboration with the endangered language speakers, B.A. created what he refers to as visual poems. Each photograph is a poetic and visual representation of a word or phrase, often one that's difficult to translate into English. In addition, contemporary poets were invited to create poems responding to the photographs, further making this a conversation between photographs, the languages, and the poems. So this exhibition, while it is a photography and a poetry exhibition, at first glance, it is, at its core, a call to action. It's a reminder that culture cannot continue without the people who carry it forward, and that we are the stewards of our own stories. And without us, and without learning about each other's cultures, we cannot hope to pass on our heritage to our children and to their children after that. So now we are delighted to have a conversation with B.A. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. You can all hear, yeah, you can hear me. So first of all, Sukkot Alegre, for those of you who are Sephardic, and for those of you who aren't, I'm sorry. And thank you for joining today.
So I'm going to ask the first question. B.A., what inspired you to begin this research, and why do you feel it's important to preserve endangered languages?
I have been warned to be brief, and I'm going to do my best. So this actually started, I was doing a different project that was a lot of flash and no real value. I was doing a big landscape project in Oklahoma called Sooners Later. It was about neon amidst the rolling grass fields of Oklahoma. And I, one day, was driving my nephew, who at the time was about 4 years old, to go to the Cherokee Heritage Center in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. He is enrolled Cherokee. And while driving, I was listening to the radio. He was asleep, he didn't care. I was listening to the radio, and there was an interview with Dwayne Johnson, famed of wrestling and movies and everything. And he was talking about, I assume, promoting Moana or something. And he was talking about how he had all this success and was doing all these incredible things, but he had this giant hole in him because his mother could speak Samoan, his mother was Samoan, and he didn't have these deep cultural ties that she had. He couldn't speak the language, didn't go back very often, and whatever achievements he might have had, there was still this bit missing from him. And I happen to be an endangered language speaker. I have a degree in linguistics in spite of otherwise frivolity. And there's an expression in theater that you have to use real props because if a real coin hits the stage, everyone knows. And I was driving in the car, going to Cherokee Heritage Center, and all of a sudden, the real coin had hit the stage. And I gave up entirely frivolous landscapes of Oklahoma, started thinking about language revitalization, thinking about language, thinking about poetry, thinking about diversity. And from there, there was nothing else to do. I spent 3 years going around the country to all sorts of crazy places because there was nothing else.
That's wonderful. So as you'll see in the exhibition, there are many different people that were involved in this project, and I know that you have created close relationships with almost everybody that you worked with.
There's tons coming tomorrow.
Yes, and many will be here tomorrow. We're very excited. How did you identify these folks? How did you find them and create these relationships, and what was the process like traveling around the country?
When I first started it, I wanted to do it the quote-unquote right way, which was the absolute wrong way, which was I started reading, it's not specifically a Native American project, but there's lots of Native American partners. There's lots of cultural diaspora partners. There's 3 Jewish languages. There's Amish. There's African American languages as well. When I first started, I would reach out to these individual groups and tribes and nations and say, hey, can you recommend me someone who I should be working with? And they would invariably give me whatever political figure they had who was the top, who liked getting their picture taken, who did not speak the language, had no interest in learning the language or doing anything with it, but really liked getting their picture taken, and I get that. After about 3 or 4 pictures, I abandoned that entirely. I got tired of flying 8 hours, then driving 8 hours, then going up someone's long driveway to find out they didn't speak a word of the language. And so I had a big turn in it about that point. I met a man who's coming tomorrow. His name is Nicolas, who runs the Chickasaw language program. He's a young guy, and I found him entirely through a Google search. And I met him, and he was incredible, and he was doing this great work with young folks on the Chickasaw Res in Ada, Oklahoma. And I realized that, A, the story was really not about the past, but about the future. I like to joke that in spite of my last book being about the Holocaust, this is the most Jewish project I've ever done in my life. There's this huge sense of V'dor Lador and this idea that you want to be stewards and shepherds for future generations. Once I realized that, the world of people who are really into endangered language is really, really small. There's not that many folks on the ground doing it, and they all know each other. And once you've done right by 1 or 2 people, it's easy to build out from there. And what you find also is that when you're dealing with folks who care about language and about culture, you get a lot of folks who are poets, who are writers, who are artists, who are musicians. You get folks who kind of get what you're doing and want to be involved and be creating things as well. And you'll go and you'll drag someone out to the middle of nowhere and do a weird thing, and they'll say, well, I know somebody who's working on Tewa. I know somebody who will let you, who's a Latino musician, who'll let you hang out and do some weird stuff with her. And that just kind of went from there.
It's lovely.
That is, and then this last question is I'm gonna give you the clicker because I want you to.
I don't want the clicker. I don't want it. I don't want that kind of power.
I want you to tell us some of your favorite stories and experiences from your travels while working on this project.
You don't need the clicker. We can do this. So I'm. No.
It's okay.
No,
we'll start here.
No.
We'll start here.
No, this is lovely. Let's start here.
All right. So the problem is if you get me on story time, I'm hard to stop. So this lady right here is 102 years old. She is the last speaker of Tanacross. She lives in a village in Alaska that is really and truly impossible to get to. I drove up to her home And it was right towards the end of the project, and the project got cut short a little bit without getting too far into the weeds on it. I had a medical problem and lost use of my legs for 9 months. And so I'm in this giant Forrest Gump leg system driving around the Alaskan tundra, right? And she doesn't have a phone or electricity or internet or anything. So she knew I was coming because a week earlier, her niece had driven up the 5 hours from the closest city and told her, hey, there's this guy coming. He's weird. It's hard to hear him over his suits, but he's nice. You should meet him. And so she said, okay, sure, send him by. So a week later, I just show up at her door in this village. The population couldn't have been more than 40 people. I was the first new person they'd seen in quite a while. And I show up at her door, I walk in, oh, hey, she says, you're late. And but the picture was very simple. I'd explained to her via the niece kind of what I was thinking about. Most of the time in the project, the words were sourced by the people who I was speaking with, and I'd come up with some concepts. In this one particular instance, I came in with a word, because I'd found that there was a word in the Tanacross dictionary, which was, I'm going to botch it a little bit, but I've been sitting around thank goodness. I sat around for a long time without getting up. And so I had kind of told her what I wanted to do, and I showed up, and she was 102 years old. Getting her to sit around without getting up was not a difficulty. And I photographed her, and the whole family was there. They're all standing behind me over my shoulder, and they say, hey, do you want to hang around? We're going to go try and hunt some bears for dinner afterwards.
Okay.
This is not my bear hunting outfit. So there was a lot of that, though. A lot of where endangered language thrives really are places that are hard to get to and also kind of hard to leave. When someone invites you to go and hunt bears with them, if you're a person who's a creative person or an adventurous person, as ill-suited as you might be to the task, fundamentally, it's hard to leave that kind of situation. Oh, no. The clicker, I can see the clicker is ready.
No, I was also going to ask you, as she's the last living speaker, does she, I'm assuming when you speak a language, you have to speak it to somebody. Does she, or does she just not speak that language very often anymore?
So there is one woman who is who's from that same village but left, who's trying her best. She made a dictionary of Tanacross. She has been recording samples, etc. There's a reality that I think a lot of these languages are going to do really, really well, mostly because of young folks. There's also a reality that some of them aren't. And that is the way of the world, But she doesn't have a lot of folks to talk to, no.
Yeah. Sorry, my clicker. Here we go. Pennsylvania Dutch.
Okay, so this is another example of hard to contact. I spent a week on a farm of an Amish man named Sylvanesh. That's him. I had really wanted to include Pennsylvania Dutch because I speak German okay-ish, and I was interested in it, and also just because it's an unusual language that is as endangered as anything else is. And it took forever. The Amish don't allow photography in their culture, or for religious reasons. It's making a graven image, it's idolatry, and also very hard to email the Amish. And so it ended up being that there was a guy who I found who bought milk, dairy, butter, etc. from various Amish folks, and literally he would take letters from me over to people until finally Sylvan said, listen, I don't know, but the guy sounds interesting. I like this interesting language. I care a lot about his daughter had a secret cell phone. That was the reason why he did this. His daughter had a secret cell phone, and he found she was speaking English with her friends on her secret cell phone. So he felt animated about the language. And so he said, all right, let this guy come by my farm for a week. We'll see what happens. So my longtime partner, a woman named Robin, she came with me. We went out to this man's farm. He was lovely. He was wonderful. He asked me if Jews had horns. I told him we don't. And but he was a really nice guy. And we milked his cows for 5 days at 4 a.m. until finally he said, okay, one picture. And the word, and I told him beforehand, they have a specific word in Pennsylvania Dutch for it to receive permission to do something. So with his permission, we calculated the exact angle that I could photograph him that God wouldn't smite him on the spot. And it's this. It was a lot of measured things, and actually his his daughter, whose name was Lydia, was standing behind me. The cell phone was hidden at the time, I assure you. And she was holding a mirror so he could glance back and make sure he had his angle right, that he would not be naughty in God's eyes.
I love these stories, and I'm really sorry. We have 2 minutes left. I don't know if you want to speak quickly about Maggie McGee and Lakota.
Okay, Maggie, in 2 minutes. All right.
Well, you're wasting your time.
Maggie McGee's shoot came to being the night before. That we actually went up to the Crazy Horse Monument in South Dakota. It is real. It is absolutely positively real. Everyone thinks it's fake because it's ridiculous, or they think it's George Washington. It's not. It's Crazy Horse. It's extremely, extremely controversial in the Native world, by the way, this monument, for reasons good and bad. I had a very, very difficult time finding someone who would sit to do a portrait for Lakota, because it's a culture that's been abused a lot, is the truth of it. And so it was very, very difficult. And the man who runs the Red Cloud Indian School in South Dakota, the night before said, Maggie's cool, she'll do it. So the next day, not sure that it would actually turn out, she drove like 3 hours with her husband and her kid. And the people at the monument were amazing about it. They drove us up in this rickety old van. They gave us like hard hats and we had to wear all the gear or whatever. But we went up there at dusk. There's an unbelievable amount of construction crew who were up there around us because they've been blasting the whole day because they're still carving the monument out of the mountain. So once they stopped blowing things up, we got to go there and do the same. And so we hung out there for a bit. I've never felt more like the king of the world than standing on top of the monument, running the show. But it came together the night before, and it was wonderful. And now she's the cover of the book.
I know. There's so many more stories to share, and I know. And
they're going to throw tomatoes and
BA will
rocks.
be in the gallery for more storytelling.
I'll talk to you for as long as you want, any of you and all of you.
But I just wanted to say, like, a lot of what you shared, it just reminds me, I'm going to butcher this quote. It's a Simone Weil quote, but she talks about how, like, the greatest form of love or generosity is attention. And it's really beautiful hearing you talk about these portraits, because it just shows the amount of attention and care that was given to each subject. It's beautiful.
Before they get the hook and drag me off, I want to talk about intention and care for a second. It's the people at the Skirball know this. You in the audience don't. I had the choice of 2 museums that this could have premiered at. The other museum is really, really, really big. It was an absolute no-brainer to bring it here. I met the staff. I understood they cared about the work. I understood they cared about these people. Against my protests, they made me see the show again and again, even though I didn't want to see it until I walked in the door. But I am so truly impressed by the real estate, and I don't mean the physical real estate, I mean the emotional and the intellectual real estate that the team, especially these 2, gave to this show, and more importantly, to introducing the wider world to all these incredible people that I got to meet. So there, a little over, I'm sorry, I tried.
Yeah, no, you're good. So, we are obviously very, very grateful and honored that BA has trusted us with his art. So please enjoy that exhibition. It's beautiful. Spend a lot of time looking at each portrait. They're all so meaningful. Now it is my pleasure to introduce originating curator Nicolas of the Diane von Furstenberg Woman Before Fashion exhibition, and our Skirball chief curator, Cate Thurston.
All right, everyone, I'm going to fall out of my chair, but I did turn off the other microphone, so I've performed my functional duties. It is such a pleasure to be here with you all talking about these incredible exhibitions. Nicolas is the originating curator of the exhibition, Diane von Furstenberg, Women Before Fashion. And this exhibition was actually planned to come to the Skirball after Ancient Wisdom and on the national language. And those 2 exhibitions were kind of key in the excitement for Diane and for you to have the exhibition come here, right?
Exactly. When you told me about these 2 projects coming in at the Skirball, I think I told you at the very same moment that there was a great connection between Diane von Furstenberg nature and her play on words which are very, very important in her career until today. So yeah, definitely.
That's beautiful. So you are a curator at the Fashion and Lace Museum in Belgium. And how did you come to this topic?
Wow, we have 20 minutes, okay. So I started my career working in Paris for fashion houses archives such as Chanel and Dior for 5 years approximately. And I left, I'm French, by the way, and I left Paris to go to Brussels in this very tiny, small museum of fashion and lace. Because lace is a very important savoir-faire in Belgium, especially in Brussels. And when I arrived at the museum, they asked me to prepare a schedule of exhibitions highlighting Brussels fashion. It was a bit of a big task for me because I studied history of fashion, but mostly Parisian one, obviously. So I did a whole research on Belgium fashion first, so about the Six of Antwerp, for example, Dries Van Noten or others. But Brussels fashion was a bit under the radar. So I saw many names, many different names, and at some point I saw Diane von Furstenberg. And I was like, who wrote this article? Diane von Furstenberg is not, she's not from Brussels, she's American. Who did that? And I did more research about Diane, and I understood the importance of her work, not just only the wrap dress, but really her commitment to women, the advocate for women empowerment she is. And I always used to say that she's a fashion UFO. Really, trust me. Because to me, she's more than a fashion designer. She's a designer in the field of fashion. She creates very comfortable, versatile, practical pieces that are affordable and that can be worn any moment during the day on an industrial scale, which was really new, in the 70s with her wardrobe. So this was really why I wanted to do this exhibition about her. 50th anniversary of the wrap dress. This is something, and nothing changed really. I can see a bit of wrap dresses.
I see some wrap dresses in the audience. You look amazing. So this is not the first exhibition about Diane von Furstenberg, but it is the most comprehensive. Tell me a little bit about your thinking about why this is relevant now and what makes this exhibition different from other exhibitions about Diane von Furstenberg.
So I think you're referring to the Journey of a Dress, of course, exhibition, which started, I think, 15 years ago.
Yes, 2014 LACMA.
And it was before shown in Sao Paulo and, different countries. I think the very big difference is that I tried to dissect, dissecate. I'm sorry, my English is not really good.
Break it down.
So, yeah, exactly. The story of Diane and of her designs. So really trying to delve into every single detail to understand, her career and her design process. So for me, it was very obvious at the very beginning to have different chapters that would go from fashion to Diane. So discovering her design and then getting to know her more and more through the exhibition. So the title is Woman Before Fashion, and the tour of the exhibition is mirroring the title. So it starts with fashion, the wrap dress, the history of the wrap dress, going through inspiration, freedom, her connection, and finally her connection with women. So ending with women, yeah.
And I do want to talk a little bit about freedom. We have some beautiful pictures here of the wrap dress and Diane, but I want to go and look at her mom. Now, freedom, as you have really explained to me, is essential to who she is. It's essential to the brand, the movement of these garments. How did you conceptualize the freedom section, and how did we infuse her mother's story into the Skirball story?
So I would like to say that this specific story of Lily Namias, her mother, is exclusive here at the Skirball. This was not something that we developed in Brussels in the first place. And I would like to add also that for me, as the originating curator, working with you was incredible, of course. But I couldn't have been more moved by being asked to have this exhibition at the Skirball with the values of this institution resonating with Diane ones. So this is really working. So Diane's first inspiration is freedom, freeing the woman's body, freeing herself also, so leaving Brussels and really being this incredible, inspiring woman, and working as a fashion designer, very, independent. She said, I think it was maybe in 75, that she was really willing to live a man's life in a woman's body, which was really what she did, at that time. So yeah, freedom was really the basis of everything. Here, and I mean, some of you might know already about this, but Diane was not supposed to be alive at the beginning. Her mom was deported, and when she came back from the concentration camps, the doctor told her that she would not be able to give birth to a child. And I think not even 2 years after that, Diane was born. And Diane always says that she was not born normal. Well, she's extraordinary, of course, but and her mom told her that by giving Diane's life, Diane gave her life back, and she was her torch of freedom. So she was born with this very idea of following the independent, state of mind. And here we really, I think, we talked about that a lot, but we really wanted to pay this very important tribute to Lily and how inspiring she was for Diane in her path to freedom. Yes.
These are some photos behind us of Lily Naimis. Lily was arrested by the Gestapo when she was 18, and she was at several different camps, including Auschwitz, before the end of the war. And one of the things we're really honored to share in the exhibition are 2 letters that Lily wrote on her way to and from a detention camp before being sent to Auschwitz. And she wrote them with a match she found and some cardboard and threw them out of the truck. And so we have a close-up of one here. You can see, it's a scrap she found. I'll go back. And in presenting this content here at the Skirball, you worked very closely with Diane to really talk more about this story. And in the exhibition, there's a panel about her mother, about Diane's mother, in her own words. What was collecting that history like with Diane? I know you've joked that Diane is kind of your spiritual grandmother, your godmother, but you two became much closer because of adapting this to the Skirball.
Exactly. This is very specific, again, to the exhibition here at the Skirball. I asked Diane to write this specific paragraph about her mom because, as a curator, I can deal with a lot of academic matters, but this was very, very personal. So at the beginning, she didn't want to do this at all. She said, it's a bit hard to display this, and I tried to convince her by saying that this would inspire people. And then she said, of course, I'm going to do it because of that. So it was a bit of a discussion, of course. But I think, and you'll see it when visiting the exhibition, she did it in a very personal way. When I read her words, I must confess I cried a little bit. But even though I know her work very well and I know her life, but it was a bit challenging, and I think that this is her personal life, so sharing it that way is always difficult. But she did it, so.
One of the things I love about Diane is that, she's created this uniform for the working woman. She projects such strength, but she allowed us this deep moment of vulnerability, which I think is so important. I want to go back and I want to talk a little bit about her designs a little bit more while we still have some time. One of the things I think is so clever about the exhibition is you put her work in conversation with other female designers. And I was wondering if you could talk to me a little bit about that process, about where she fits into a canon of women designing for women.
So this was, at the beginning, we used only European women designers in the exhibition. And here we had the privilege to do this very beautiful mix of women designers through the decades. This is very specific. I would say this is a big difference between this Women Before Fashion show and the previous ones, such as the LACMA one, where here we have a lot of things put into perspective, such as the women, other women designers. We have women designers from the 20s, such as Madeleine Vionnet, which you will see in the exhibition, but also Donna Karan or Claire McCardle. So it's very an important mix. What makes a big difference between women designers and men designers is that, I think Diane told me that once, is that men designers create costume, female designers create actual fashion and garments that are wearable. They can, it works every day because they try their clothes on and they know what women need during the day or at night or at a party or,
It's always pockets.
It's true.
But one of the things I thought was so clever that you were teaching me about, Diane, is that this is a dress a woman could put on herself. So many times you've been getting dressed in your home and there's a zipper and you're trying to figure out how you're going to do that and then explain the injury to your family when they find you from trying to jump and put it on. And the fabrics she's working with, can you, in our last moments here, talk to me a little bit about the importance of the materials she uses?
So in Diane's work, the very first thing that is important is jersey. Other women designers worked with jersey before. You know about Gabrielle Chanel, you know about Madeleine Vionnet, you know about Sonia Rykiel. So many of them did. But Diane made it sexy. That's what she's saying all the time. So jersey is very important because it's close to the body. You can feel comfortable. It follows your steps. And you can adapt it to many, many different shapes. The wrap dress, the shirt dress, the t-shirt dress, even for trousers. So jersey is so very important, and it is the basis for her very different prints that are inspired by nature.
Well, Nicolas, it has been such a pleasure chatting with you. I hope everyone feels in charge and empowered in the exhibition. There are several photo ops in there. I encourage you to climb up on the stairs with Diane. There's a mirror where you can be, with her face very close. And if there was anything you wanted us to walk away with, what would it be before we leave?
I would say the crossword dress.
Oh, okay.
You have to see this one.
You have to see the crossword dress. Well, have a wonderful time. Thank you all for being
Enjoy.
Skirball members.
You've just got to go in and see the galleries.
Have been a Skirball member from the very beginning. I'm just thrilled to have something in my neighborhood so close to me with so many fabulous exhibitions.
Today's exhibit, I didn't expect that there were going to be 3 incredible exhibits. And in fact, I know right now, having seen one, having gone to the von Furstenberg exhibit, that I will be too saturated to see them all today, so I'll be back. That's the good news.
The curators for each of the exhibitions were very detail-oriented. They talked about a lot of things that the general public might not have known about.
I did bring a friend here today for the first time, and she said to me, it was just heartwarming. She said, "Oh, and I feel welcomed as a stranger." Right?
Often go more than once because each one has a different point of view.
Definitely will come back because there's so much to see. Can't absorb it all in one event.